don't you come on in? Today about a couple things that I found out since this morning. Let's start with the most basic. Number one, I want to talk to you about having backups and systems in place, because this storm clearly demonstrated that there was a lot of things in the society we need to fix. First, we have a problem that we have invested all this money into and all this technology under one infrastructure, in this case the power grid. And as the people who found out who have been severely affected by Hurricane Sandy, the power grid is definitely not exactly your best resource right now. While Midtown Manhattan, downtown Manhattan got power back, the outlying boroughs, including Queens and Staten Island and, of course, Long Island, are still suffering significant power loss. I had a chance to talk to a pharmacist at the CVS here in Winsted, Connecticut this afternoon. And we were talking about what happened after the autumn storm Alfred came through and how it knocked out the power in Winsted for 3 days. He said we ended up throwing a lot of prescriptions away that needed refrigeration, along with a lot of the foods, the frozen foods, and milks and dairy products from the freezers, because we had no power to run it. I said, why didn't you guys invest in a generator? He says, well, Upper Manhattan, Rhode Island said we don't need one. I said, yeah, but it's just like an insurance policy. You hope to God you don't need your insurance either, but you subscribe to your insurance, at least if things go wrong, at least you always will have a way to protect your property. He said, well, that's true. He says, it's just that they don't seem to think about those bean counters. So they never encouraged us to put a generator in our shop. He said, it's true, if we had a generator, we would have been able to keep our food fresh, and we would have still been able to sell products to customers. The same is true with the case of what's going on with the gasoline stations in New York, those that were physically inoperable conditions. It's just that they need power. If you had a generator on your store, you could have still been selling gas, milk, eggs, other domestic needs, instead of making everybody else have to drive right past you and you can make no sales. I know that the generator idea doesn't really excite you. It's money, it requires upkeep, it requires that you have a maintenance contract with some company to maintain your equipment. Or if it's a small mom and pop operation, you'd probably be maintaining your own generator. Natural gas, for the most part, in New York, was still running. Okay? And so there would be no reason why, if you had a natural gas or propane fired generator, that you could not still be open and selling services and products to your customers. What I'd like to know is, how come no one ever thought about that? Especially for those landlords that run high-rises. What's your excuse? You spend billions of millions of dollars building your high-rises? What, you can't afford to spend another $6,000 to $7,000 to have a full-size generator in your place? Stupid. Really stupid for you. Okay, I can see it for the small landlords, like my landlord only has 10 apartments in this building, where he might see a generator is kind of more of an expense that he can maintain. That's true. But if you at least had a generator, at least making sure your heat worked, you wouldn't be having people freezing in the cold. In fact, that brings me to the next thing. There's an autumn storm coming, a nor'easter with snow, potentially snow and rain and cold weather. And Mayor Bloomberg is saying, "Oh, we might be able to find housing for 30 to 40,000 people. 30 to 40,000 people? That's all? That's not going to be very good. I don't want the other, say, 450,000 people that will not be so lucky." This is the things that I get really angry about when I hear about the stupidity. Why don't you just arrange to give them little portable propane space heaters or give them permission to buy natural gas or propane fired generators so they could have kept the heat on if they already have a boiler all ready to go but needs electricity to run. For example, take my landlord's building for instance. He has oil boiler, okay? That runs on oil, but oils need to run the ignition to make the oil burn, as well as to circulate the hot water through the pipes to the radiators in the apartments, the convectors are called. Now, that's great. But if you don't have a way of providing electricity, it doesn't matter if you have a full 275 gallons of oil in hand. You won't be able to burn it. You won't be able to heat with it. And it's going to be getting cold, honey. In the next few days, it's going to be down to -3, -4 degrees Celsius at night. What is the common sense in this? One of the things about being a person with Asperger's is that we tend to see things outside of the box. We're the fools on the hill. We come in, we know, we see it. And we see the answer, but it seems that the people in the box can't seem to see their ass from a hole in the ground. You need to make sure you have backups, at least 2 backups. Okay, a plan A, a plan B, preferably a plan C. In my case, in this building here, for example, plan A would be A, get a generator on the site that can provide power to run your boiler in the cellar so that we would still have heat. And since it's running on heating oil, get yourself a diesel generator, and then you can use your heating oil to run your generator too. Okay? 2 problems solved. 1, you got the fuel, and 2, you got the heat. 3, another secondary choice would be get each tenant their natural gas connection hooked back up again to Connecticut Lightning Gouge, Yankee Gas, so we can at least have our own heat sources in the form of space heaters. Then, vented space heaters that can be direct vented through the wall. Then we will have a backup heating source and a potential way to cook dinner so that nobody's going to have to go hungry. Don't you people ever think, are you people so beyond the curve that you don't even know that this is not going to be the first time you're going to have a storm? Do you ever think of this? Oh, and then when the storm comes up, it's almost like the commercial. Gee, I could have had a generator, but I didn't buy one. Why do you wait for a disaster before you finally realize something's got to be done? Huh? Are you guys mental or something? It seems to me, especially you landlords, especially down in New York State, New York City, Long Island, you guys make millions of dollars a year, and you mean to tell me you can't afford to buy a generator? You guys, how much you make a month on a typical studio apartment in New York? $2,000-$3,000 in Manhattan, and you can't afford to buy a generator? What kind of a fool are you? You think this is gonna not happen again? Come on! Get it out of your ass! This is gonna happen again and again and again and again. And it's not because I like to see you suffer. I don't know what our Autumn Stewart in the North American continent's doing, but clearly she's trying to tell you, hey, snap out of it. Wake up. Wake up. You're going to be sitting in the dark again. I'm going to make sure you suffer. Oh, that cheek's not tender? Wake up. No, look, people, what everybody's been trying to tell you, you got to wake up, you got to look at the real world. Okay? Never put all your eggs in one basket and expect that the basket isn't going to have a hole. If you depend on the central utilities to provide you with power and they fail, you should consider a possibility in this day and age. Did you learn nothing after 9/11? Didn't you learn nothing? How many more storms is it going to take you before a standby backup generator is not just a convenience? It could be a lifesaver. Now, granted, I will bear you guys a little slack for those of you who had suffered significant flooding. Even if you had a generator, your generator probably would have been underwater. Okay? For you, I can understand at least you had planned to try to keep things running, but unfortunately, floodwater has destabilized your whole backup plan. That's where you should have double and tertiary backups. You should have at least 3 ways to provide for your routine functions every day. It's not funny, and it is not laughable, and I'm not laughing my way to the bank, and I don't mind this humorous. But I cannot sit there and try to constantly remind you over and over again, get yourself prepared. I told you that. The government told you that when they told you to get out on mandatory evacuations. For those of you who did get out, I have no problem with you leaving. You did the right thing. My problem is for those of you who did not leave. Those of you who stayed, of the 41 people that died in New York City alone, a good portion of those deaths were because of the storm surge and flooding. But now you're freezing and cold. You have no food. You have no shelter. You have no light. And yet, as I said, the most important thing is you have to remember is use your head. If you were lucky enough to keep your home and your home didn't get flooded and you have no heat, my common sense is why didn't you consider having a backup plan from the beginning? Makes sense to me. We always should have a backup. Now, in our case here in this building, for example, if I may use this as an example, like I said, landlords should have a generator in their basement running off of the heating oil so that if the main power goes out, he can at least still keep the heat going. After all, he's got 275 gallons of heating oil. I'm sure he can spare some of it to run a generator big enough to run the boiler, so at least we can keep heat circulating to the apartments. And then he also needs to consider a backup source of maybe we ought to get the gas lines in this building fixed so that we can finally have the ability to get directly vented space heaters so that tenants can always heat the apartment even if the boiler doesn't start. These are things that I consider to be common sense. Our government does that. Why shouldn't you? Our government, for the most part, always prepares to have at least a backup. Ask any military commander. They have like 2 or 3 plans of attack. You should have the same thing. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not a government. You don't have money to spend $700 for a toilet seat. No, but maybe you could go ahead and get a couple toilet seats for maybe $25, and then you could at least have a spare set of toilet seats when necessary to replace ones that broke. These are the kind of things I'm trying to get at. We got to think ahead. We got to think about what we need. And we got to stop acting as if it's okay when things go wrong. You need to always be prepared. That's a Boy Scout motto, right? Always be prepared. Always have a spare. Now, Mr. Mayor Bloomberg, let me suggest one thing. You want to provide lodging for 40,000 people of New York City? Why don't you work with FEMA and get people space heaters? It'll be cheaper they'll be able to get more space heaters for some people. And the new building codes of Manhattan should say all new buildings must have multiple sources of energy so that this does not happen again. Common sense. Do it. I cannot stress enough that this is going to happen again. And it's going to happen again because things are changing. The weather's changing. And we need to think about that. And we got to grow up, and we got to realize that nothing is going to stay the same. Okay? So we have to start looking into having backups upon backups. Now, I also wanted to take this time to talk about something else. This morning I had talked about a lot of different things, and unfortunately I felt really, really lousy, so I did not really feel that the video was up to its normal par of quality, so I ended up throwing that video in the garbage. The main one is what I just mentioned about backups. The same applies here. I mean, I do videos using a new camera system, and it works pretty good. But the biggest Achilles heel is the analog to digital converter. That thing, I don't have a second one. I only have one. So if that thing ever breaks, we're SOL. In part, but we still have the iPhone, so we can still do videos. It would suck. But no matter how you do it, it still comes up peanuts. At least I'm planning ahead to have backups. Now, while we're at it talking about backups, let's talk about the weather. As we know it's coming. This year is going to be some very big changes. Big weather events are going to happen. We are not going to see the, like last year, nice roasty, toasty weather where everybody's nuts is roasting in an open fire. That's not going to happen. Okay? This year we have a strong, I believe it's an El Nino that's going to come in. It's going to potentially give the Northeast the weather that we justly deserve. And because of that reason, we need to always plan to have a backup. Now, I don't know who is going to be seriously keep up with all this, but I'm going to tell you right now. You got to pressure your landlord, your city council, your first selectman, your mayor, your town manager, whoever he or she may be, to encourage people to make backup plans. And you must encourage your landlord to consider the alternatives and the ramifications of the lack of alternatives. How many people after they get the money for FEMA will be doing the same ding-dong stupid mistakes over and over again? Who's going to pay for all this maintenance? Who's going to pay for all the flood damage? Who's going to pay for all these problems that are happening? You will, in the form of taxes. But when it comes to bad decisions, I don't think we should have to pay for those. Innocent bystanders, in this case the tenants that feel powerless. You have power, you just don't realize it. You can tell your landlord straight out, ultimatum, say, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, Landlady, if you do not do something by preparing for the next time, I'm not going to stay. I'm going to leave. And if you check into every landlord and landlady property and you see that there's no generator or there's no alternative energy sources such as propane, natural gas, wood, coal, whatever, then you just move on to the next one. You vote with your feet. You vote by saying, I'm interested or I'm not interested. And these landlords have got to stop putting all their eggs in one basket. And for the homeowners, yourselves, you, especially next time, should say to myself is, I'm going to have a backup system. I cannot depend on the government always being there to bail me out. This nanny state baloney and depending all on one utility has got to stop. Because there may not be the ability to keep doing that anymore. Well, anyway, I want you to think about that. And also, I want you to thank you very much for watching out the Hurricane Sandy video coverage. I think that was amazing. 527 views. 527 views. Congrats. That's wonderful. But where's the comments? I mean, obviously the views seem to indicate that people obviously liked it. But now we have to accept that there is the aftermath. And you and everyone else should take what the North American Snow Queen says, at least with some consideration. The world is not the way it used to be. We're entering a new age. But with that new age comes responsibilities, and that means that you have to be preparing for yourself. You can't depend on everybody else to save your bacon. Sometimes you have to work in saving your own bacon. I mean, for the gas stations in New York that did not get flooded out, if you had a generator on hand, you could have been selling gasoline. You could have been making a lot of money. You could have helped ease the congestion on those lines. You could have made it easier for people to get fuel for their generators. But you didn't invest in the technology, and now you suffered in the loss of revenue. Any businessman or woman who says that's okay should get a frontal lobotomy. It is not okay. It's not the idea of business. Business is to make a living, not to give the business to your competitor because you didn't want to bother to prepare for backup for emergency. How many businesses could have been open and at least selling gasoline and could have made sure that people had milk and eggs and made sure that people had a place that can get food? Where were you? Now you're going to throw all that food away in your convenience store because you have no food. We have no way to keep it refrigerated. How about all the pharmacies? Like the CVS up here said, they ended up throwing away a lot of prescriptions because they had no way to keep them refrigerated. Because upper management did not encourage the stores, which was built from the beginning, brand new store, to have a generator on hand. Stop depending on the government to bail you out all the time. Maybe next year, next time this happens, you'll be ready. But if not, whose fault's that? It really, really upsets me that when people don't even think that this is just going to happen ever again. You sign up for insurance for your house so that if your house ever has a fire or flooded out, that you always will have some backup at least to protect you. Well, why aren't you doing the same thing by having considered a generator and insurance policy? It would have saved you. At least if you had your heating system hooked up to your generator, you would have had heat. In the next few nights, it's going to be in the, in the minuses. -3, -5 degrees Celsius. Why, in the heaven's name, you don't plan ahead? It's beyond me. Maybe it's too late right now, but it's not going to be too late for next time. Get in contact with your generator supplier and you get one. You get it installed by a licensed contractor and you'll have it, so that you'll always be able to turn it on when the power goes out and you won't freeze your ass off. And your milk will still stay good in your refrigerator, and you'll have lights. And you'll be able to watch the news and find out what's going on. And maybe even you'll be able to help out your neighbors who didn't make the best decisions. Well, that's all I want to say. Next time, think better, think clearly, and plan ahead. Thank you, everybody, and I will hopefully talk to you soon. And please, don't forget the comments. I will continue to pressure that. Comments, comments, comments. I think you got a lot to say, and I know you will. Semper Fi.